New York Rangers, it is time to start the Stanley Cup Playoffs in 2024. That's right, let's go. Playoffs start this weekend. New York Rangers, Carolina Hurricanes. Man, highly anticipated series. Maybe the two best teams in the league. Let's go. Let's get it started. Fired up. Rangers and Hurricanes. And that's right. Starting the Stanley Cup playoffs. Jim, playoffs started 2 weeks ago. What are you talking about? Rangers just swept the Washington Capitals. But listen, PK Subban doesn't get a lot of things right. He was right on this one. That Rangers Capitals series, that was the tune-up to the playoffs for the New York Rangers. Right? That was a series that was never in doubt. Never, ever in doubt. So, really, the Stanley Cup playoffs start now in round 2. Good on the Rangers. Big sweep over the Capitals. But now the playoffs really get underway against the Carolina Hurricanes. And hello, everybody. I am Jim Cerny. Great to be hanging out with you here on Forever Blueshirts Rink Wrap. We're going to give you a little extended preview of Rangers Hurricanes. Going to be joined in a little bit by Dave Maloney, former Rangers captain and longtime Rangers radio analyst on MSG Network. Does great work alongside Kenny Albert and Donnie LaGreca. And Sam Rosen, breaking a little news, Sam Rosen is going to work the radio side as well a bit during the second round against Carolina. But get to all that. Let's circle back before we jump ahead into this series. So we'll just do a quick circling back. And why is it that I'm saying that the playoffs are starting now? Listen, the Washington Capitals, God bless them, great effort to even make it into the Stanley Cup playoffs. But you know what? The New York Rangers, take nothing away from them. They earn the right to play the worst team in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. They earned that over 82 games. They were the best team in the regular season in the NHL. Franchise record 55 wins, franchise record 114 points. They held off the Carolina Hurricanes, another great team, held them off to win the division and ultimately win the President's Trophy as well. They finished a point ahead of the Dallas Stars, another great team. They held them off to win the President's Trophy. So the Rangers earned the right to play the worst team in the playoffs, and that was the Washington Capitals. Like in the old days when one used to play 16 in the first round, well, this was 1 against 16, literally. Washington, listen, again, not ripping into a team. They're an NHL team. They played hard. They're a gritty team. Love Spencer Carberry as a coach. They were just completely overwhelmed and overmatched in this series. And you might be saying, well, Jim, what are you talking about? Games 3 and 4, especially in Washington. Capitals have had extended surges. That second period in Game 4, clearly the better team, right? They certainly had the better of the play. And maybe if not for Igor Shesterkin and a terrific Rangers special teams, both the power play and penalty kill, maybe Washington wins Game 4. But you know what? This was never in doubt. Never was I sitting there watching any one of the 4 games saying, oh boy, Rangers are in trouble here. Yeah, there were times that they were pinned deep in their zone for stretches. Yeah, they fell behind 1-0. Yeah, Washington came back and tied them, especially games 3 and 4. Those were the tighter games in my opinion. And listen, Washington, again, they played hard. They played as hard as they could. They put up as good a fight as they could put up. But never was that first round in doubt. Really, to me, never was any of the 4 games of the series in doubt, much less the entire series. So the Rangers did what they had to do. Superior team, deeper team, more talented team, and a team that really never seemed flustered in that series. They kept their composure really well. When Washington tried to get underneath their skin, they kept their composure when Washington played its best hockey and had the Rangers back on their heels. To me, a sign of a good team. No stress from them. Igor, of course, was a difference maker, especially in games 3 and 4. Rangers come out of that series, deservedly so, with the sweep. maybe the most important thing is they come out of it perfectly healthy as well. They earned a couple extra days off earlier this week, Monday, Tuesday. Peter Laviolette gives them the days off. They wait on their second round opponent, knowing all along that this was destiny. The top two teams in the Metropolitan Division, maybe the two best in the league, were going to meet here in round two. To me, this was the most guaranteed second round when you looked at the overall playoff matchups. Right? Out of all the divisions, I could argue, what's the second round going to be in the Atlantic Division or the Pacific Division? But here, there was no doubt that it was going to be Rangers Hurricanes. So we've got it. Rangers took 2 out of 3 from the Canes during the regular season. But in those 3 games, the Rangers managed only 4 goals. So that gives you a moment of pause. Tells you a few things. One, Rangers can win tight hockey games. And there are going to be tight hockey games the rest of the playoffs, but certainly in this series, between two teams that could not be any more evenly matched, in my opinion, than the Rangers and the Hurricanes. But the Rangers won a pair of 1-goal games. They won 2-1 at home. Solid all-around effort. Get a third-period goal from Will Cooley. Oh, wait, shocker. The Rangers scored a third-period goal to win a game. They did it all season. That's what they do. They find ways to win. So does Carolina, though. So that's going to make this a really intriguing series. So you had the 2-1 win earlier in the season at the Garden. And then, really, maybe the best regular season game of the season was March 12th down in Raleigh. Rangers were playing the second of it back-to-back. Carolina's waiting for them. There was a fever pitch in the crowd. Right? It had such a great playoff atmosphere that night. And the Rangers skate out of there with a 1-0 win. The only goal coming by Adam Fox in the first period. Igor Shesterkin was outstanding. But you know what? What made this win so good for the Rangers, yes, they did it on back-to-back nights. Yes, they shut out the Carolina Hurricanes, one of the best teams in the league. Yes, they did it on the road. All those things stack up to make this a great win. But what stood out to me was the Rangers won on a night that the Carolina Hurricanes playing at home were really good. It wasn't like the Hurricanes didn't come to play or they struggled that night. They were really good. And so were the Rangers. And that's the game I point to for what we can expect in this series. It is going to be tight. Tight. Will and skill to the max. And both teams have it. And so many interesting subplots, right? Peter Laviolette coached the Hurricanes in 2006 to Stanley Cup championship. His captain of that team, Rod Brind'Amour, current coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. Two of the best current coaches in the NHL, matching wits here in the second round, not the first round. Here in the second round. Vincent Trocheck, I think the Rangers' best all-around player in round 1. And outside of Artemi Panarin, I would argue was the Rangers' MVP this season during the 82-game regular season. Heart and soul, offense, defense, 200-foot game. He won 72% of his faceoffs in that series against the Capitals. The rest of the Rangers centers, 50% or under. And in the case of Alex Wenberg, way under 50%. Vincent Trocheck, 72%. You talk about keys to special teams, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but you talk about keys to special teams when you're killing a penalty, taking a face-off in your own end, when you taking that offensive zone face-off and you're on the power play. What's the key? What's the first key? Winning the face-off, gaining puck possession. And Trocheck plays both ends of the special teams. He's consistently winning those faceoffs. And he crushed the Capitals, but he's been doing it all season. Centers that took more than 1,000 faceoffs this year, only John Tavares had a slightly better faceoff winning percentage than Vincent Trocheck. This guy's so valuable. And cool subplot. He used to play for the Carolina Hurricanes, including 2 years ago when the Rangers knocked the Hurricanes out in 7 games in the second round. A series that saw the home team win the first 6 games until Igor Shesterkin and the Rangers won Game 7 down in Raleigh. Though Peter Laviolette will tell you, well, that means nothing. They're not even watching video of that series. That's 2 years ago. Doesn't mean anything. And that should tell us something. Us outsiders, media, fans. What happened before, it's part of the history. But what's going to happen here, each team's going to write its own script. And it's going to be a hell of a series. And you talk about subplots, Laviolette and Trocheck. How about Brady Shea playing the best hockey of his career right now for the Carolina Hurricanes? How about Brett Pesce, injured? We talk about how the Rangers came out of the first round healthy. Well, Brett Pesce, key part of a dynamic Carolina Hurricanes defense corps, missed the final 3 games of that series against the Islanders in a walking boot, suffering what they call a lower body injury. Well, looks like he's going to play at some point in this series, especially because we expect this series to be a long series. But it doesn't look like he's going to be able to start the series, meaning Tony DeAngelo, talk about subplots to a series, Tony DeAngelo is going to replace him in the lineup, has the past 3 games, but now he gets a whack against his former team. Talk about crazy subplots, right? Boy, would he love to exact revenge. Well, he didn't do it 2 years ago when he played a bigger role on the Carolina Hurricanes defense. And he's a wild card. He can create for Carolina. He can also hurt them with stupid penalties too, right? So he's a guy to watch out for in this series as part of the subplot. But one injury that's key, I think, to start this series is that one. Brett Pesce being out of the lineup. And hey, another former Ranger is also out for Carolina. Jesper Fast did not play at all in the first round. He's got a neck injury. Don't know his status for this series. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to start the series. So that's a key guy, key grinder in the bottom 6. Ranger fans know really well what Jesper Fast can do. He's a playoff type guy too. So Carolina, they've got the 2 injuries. The Rangers are healthy and could be getting healthier if Filip Chytil is able to be available at some point in this series, whether it's to slot in because he's healthy. And Peter Laviolette says, well, he's going to make our top 12 or 12 forwards even better, and somebody else will come out. Or if there's an injury somewhere up and down the lineup. If Filip Chytil's healthy and ready to come back in, he hasn't played since November 2nd because of an upper body injury believed to be a concussion, but not confirmed, but believed to be a concussion. Guy hasn't played in months, so you don't know what he could bring. But boy, he could be a wild card if he gets into this series as well. I mean, so many things to dissect from this series. It's going to be a great one. And who better to break it down with me than the former captain of the Rangers and longtime MSG radio analyst Dave Maloney. When we come back, I'll be joined by Dave, and we'll break down the second round between the New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm Cerny, and he is Dave Maloney, the MSG analyst and the former captain of the Broadway Blueshirts himself. Dave, thanks for a few minutes joining us today to talk a little Rangers Hurricanes.
Yeah, it should be fun, Jimmy. It's nice to chat. It's nice to be talking about the Rangers' continued success. It was a great regular season and an opening round playoff against a team that I think arguably people thought probably didn't deserve to be in, but they did get in and they put up a formidable battle. So I just think it's it's a good first step, and the journey gets more difficult, certainly with Carolina on the deck.
Yeah, you talk about first steps, and I thought PK Subban nailed it the other day, and typically I don't agree with most things PK Subban says on the air, but he said this was kind of like the warm-up series for the
Right.
Rangers,
Right.
and that's exactly how I felt going into the series, and then as the series played out. And I know you're a former player, players view it differently probably, but just from the outside, I never once felt like, boy, the Rangers are in trouble in this game or
No.
this sequence, certainly
Yep.
not in the series. I just felt like at any time they could just pull away, and which is exactly what they did over and over. So I guess you're nodding your head there. You kind of
Yeah.
agree too, right?
Well, I think going into this series, I found it hard to believe that Washington ultimately win 4 games. So whatever it was going to take, and I think in summation, when they were tied going into the third period in Game 4, I thought that they were going to win it. They'll win it in the third. The thing about this club all season long that's been wonderful. This is my 19th season doing this, and it was funny. I was talking to a couple of people this morning over at the practice, and I think this might be the one team that from the get-go was built to know who they were, bought into how they had to play, and did it. And there was never, ever a moment where there was a doubt on what they knew or who they knew they were, right? So it's almost like it was shift to shift, period to period, game to game. Very little time spent looking back, very little time spent looking ahead. And I think Peter Laviolette set that table. I had the opportunity to interview him for the network when he was introduced to the media. And talking before even the interview, he was suggesting that it starts today, and we're going to build to be a program that has a chance to spring. And after watching them all year long and the way they operated, so to answer you, whether it was the first step or whatever, to me it just was the way they played all season long. Is that they don't get overly rattled. But now you get down to 8 teams, and the competition gets a little more formidable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm going to kind of circle back to what you were just talking about there about the Laviolette system and how it was, really right from the get-go, right from day one, there was a plan in place. Part two of that, if there was a 1A and a 1B, was the fact that I really think that this Rangers team was ready for that. They were ready to listen. They were ready to follow the lead of a coach here, in this instance, Peter Laviolette, because of what happened in the playoffs last year, because of that disappointment. I think that lingered so much that it made the buy-in that much easier this season.
Well, it was the consensus coming out of the exit interviews that, from a player's perspective, and that's just the times we're in. The players are asked for opinions, and they're of a generation. Unlike us, by and large, we were never asked. And most times we weren't ever empowered to have an observation. So I think it's different. It's in a lot of ways it's better. But it seemed to be that they needed some more direction. And listen, you're coming off a guy that had 100 and what do you have, 110 points, 107 points. It's just a different voice, a different style, and there are a couple of things. I remember in the final third period against Ottawa, game 82, and also remember the opening game against Buffalo, where I remember thinking after the first 2 periods in Buffalo, oh my God, I wish this was the final game of the regular season. Because they went into that defensive formation in the middle of the ice. They were disciplined. They beat a Buffalo team that coming into the season, a little bit like Ottawa, at the end of the season, were consensus they were ready to take the next step. It wasn't even close.
Right.
So it really is. It started from the thought that the players needed a new voice. Is Peter a yeller and a screamer? Not at all. Not at all, from my observation. Is he? He would be great to sit down and have a beer with, just to find out, where he's been a success where he's been. Right, he's won a cup, took 2 teams to Cup finals, one in the American League, one in the International League. We'd be curious the process for him. I've been told he's a little softer than he was when he first started the Islanders. I think you
Yeah.
probably know that.
Yeah.
But I found him wonderfully informative, wonderfully willing, and if you think things rot from the head down, well, you have to suggest that they bloom from the head down also. And Laviolette has been good.
Yeah, and a really cool kind of subplot to this series is Laviolette going head to head with Rod Brind'Amour. Two coaches
Sure.
extremely well respected, and Brind'Amour, a guy who won a cup as a player underneath Peter Laviolette. It's just kind of a really neat side story to this entire series.
Well, as Peter would say, he's been around a long time, and there's been
Yeah,
a lot of bodies he's crossed paths with. So
yeah,
I don't think he's terribly shocked. Obviously, Brendan Moore was his captain when they won the cup. So it'll be an interesting, right? The coaches matchup it makes for an interesting story. They both have their fingerprints all over their respective hockey teams.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said you were at, the get together at practice today, so you listened to the coach. The thing that struck me, couple things. One is, he said I'm not going to talk lineups and what have you, but he did talk quite a bit, and he mentioned several times Carolina's speed. Carolina's speed. He brought it up about three different times on different questions and answers, which leads me to question, even though Matt Rempe's made an extremely, big and positive impact on this lineup, is this the series for Matt Rempe? Or does it fit better with a Johnny Brodzinski? Is he a better fit with that Carolina speed game? And then if that's question one, 1A would be, what do you think about the possibility of Philip Hedl here in round two?
Well, these are all questions that the observations. Matt Rempe gets 8 minutes a night. Johnny Brodzinski's going to get 9 minutes, 10 maybe.
Right.
My thoughts on Philip Hedl are if he comes into the lineup, it's probably not a good story because there's somebody been hurt or the series has turned against them. Can he jump? So those to me are all just secondary and tertiary observations. There's so many more things that are crucial to this series as to whether Rempe's in the lineup or Brodzinski's in the lineup. That being said, I do think Rempe causes any blue line to be a little more cautious when he's on the ice. He forechecks hard. And when you talk about the Carolina speed, it's not so they are fast, but they're relentless.
Yeah.
They're relentlessly fast. So I think that's the element of speed. And the Rangers aren't taking a second step to speed. They're not any faster or quicker than the Rangers are. As a matter of fact, I think the Rangers are quicker because they're a little better with the puck. And but that relentless pace that Carolina plays with, to me, is probably the biggest factor in the series.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I thought in the third and final meeting, the 1-0 game down in Raleigh, I thought the Rangers out hurricaned the Hurricanes. It kind of beat them at their own game, though you can argue that styles are kind of similar anyway between these teams. But I thought they outdid Carolina at their own game. I guess your thoughts about that, and can they do that over a 7-game series? How difficult is that to do over a 7-game series?
Well, listen, I think it's going to be difficult for either team. I think it's a given, the pursuit and the pace of the game. And can they out Carolina? Well, the question is, can Carolina outskill the Rangers? I think all things being equal, the Rangers don't have to work quite as hard to create opportunities. I think their skill sets are deeper. Now, again, when the Rangers in that 1-0 game, Gensel was not in the lineup.
Right.
Kuznetsov had just been there. I just think that both teams, you could arguably make a case that these are two of the top three teams in the league.
Yep.
So the margin for error and really the difference, I think to me the difference is, can the Rangers minimize the time spent in their own end under the relentless pressure they're going to see? And can the Rangers create? See, to me, the Rangers, when they're on top of the game, remind me a little bit of the Chicago teams that won cups. The Hurricanes. Now, again, we'll know better after seeing the series whether it's a little easier for Carolina to score. But for me, when the Rangers are on top of the game, they don't have to work quite as hard. There's a little more imagination. There's a little more puck skill deeper into the lineup than there is in Carolina. So, I just think that, to me, that's the difference. The Rangers, it isn't getting back to what we talked about before. I don't think anybody thought that it would have been in this I don't even think anybody ever thought that Artemi Panarin was going to score 49 goals by consistently getting the puck to the net. Like, where
Right.
did we ever see that in his background?
Right.
Right? And I don't sure that anybody was going to buy into a system that forced them to be patient. They were razzle dazzle. They're fun to watch. They'll zip it all around. I just think that they're a different team that way. But is it in their DNA to defend under relentless pressure? To me,
Which
that's
we'll find out. Yeah, and it's going to be a
right.
lot of pressure, as you said, on that Ranger defense core. That
Mhm.
Schneider Miller pair. They played very well down the stretch. Played very, very well against Washington. This is going up not just a level. This is going up multiple levels. What they're going to face. Interesting. Talking about defensemen, Carolina Brett Pesce looks like the walking boot is off from what we heard from Don Waddell today. But he probably is not going to be ready to start the series, meaning that it'll be Tony DeAngelo, not Brett Pesce, in that lineup. That's a major area that the Rangers need to try and exploit, I would think, while Pesce remains out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it again. I mean, Tony's been good. He played. The Islanders didn't give him much breathing room. They managed to find a way to get it done. So, are they a different team with Pesce out on? Certainly they are. But Tony's been around, and as far as D'Angelo, or as far as Keandre and Braden, now they were both involved 2 years ago. I think with the switch in pairings, I think you don't have to worry quite as much about matchups because I think you're a little more balanced when it comes to playing in matchups. A Trouba Gustafson is a little stronger defensive pair because Jacob's been around as long as he has been. So they've had to move bodies around, and I've been totally and wonderfully impressed with the development of Braden Schneider.
Yeah.
Um, this guy is strong. He's quick, smart. So these two teams are just so close, Jimmy. It
Yeah.
is just there are very, very few holes in either lineup. As a matter of fact, if Pesci's in the lineup, there's probably no holes really.
Right. And the one area, if you say, hey, let's say this goes down to game 7, you say, oh, it's a flip of a coin, or is it your goaltender? That's the one area I still keep coming back to. Like, I
Hmm.
really think these teams are head to head, flip a coin,
Hmm.
over a course of a series. But if I had to take a goalie for game 7,
Hmm.
I'm taking Igor.
Sure.
And that's not a knock on Frederick Anderson, who's played
No.
very, very well since coming back from his health issue. But I
Hmm.
see you nodding your head. I take it you agree that
Well,
could be a difference maker here for the Rangers.
yeah. Well, listen, I'm representative of the tribe that the goaltender is Igor Shesterkin, so I'm certainly biased to his game.
Yeah.
But and the thing you really never know, like I'll watch. I'll start a little later. I'll go back and watch the 3 games that these two teams played. But you really don't get a sense. You get a real good sense when you see a team 4 times in 6 nights or whatever it is, and the different players and how Drury is going to react under pressure.
Right.
Ken Kuznetsov played at the pace he needs to play on. We know Gensel is a big time player. We know Aho is a big time player because there's a history there, right? So I just think that Frederick Anderson battled some health issues. That's the bit of the question mark there. Can he stay healthy? Recently hasn't been able to do that. That has not been an issue for Shesterkin. And I would give the edge in net. I think a lot of people would, but it's the same edge as any other area.
Right.
I would say it's a little bigger than perhaps the special teams. The Rangers 5-on-5 numbers I'd like to see better. Um, from an analytics standpoint, they don't score out very well 5-on-5. But I do remember my first playoff series was against the Buffalo Sabres in 1977, and John Ferguson was our coach, and he'd won 5 cups. And he said the key to playoff hockey is goaltending and special teams. And you can make a case the Rangers were pretty good in those areas in the first round, and we'll see what happens beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty good in those areas. Igor, obviously, we touched on him; he was great. But the Rangers special teams, when they're cooking, like they're cooking right now, and I know it's Washington and they're underdog outman team against the Rangers. But the way the Rangers throw it around on the power play and, the new wrinkles that you see, it's not the same look all the time. It's
Right.
those new wrinkles that come in. I mean, again, we'll see. It'll play out over a 7-game series. But that really, if they find their way on special teams, that negates a lot of their quote unquote issues at 5-on-5.
Yeah, well, again, on the other side of that, because they're so close, there isn't likely to be the disparity in penalties. Carolina with Stahl and the penalty, they're just too close to me to say decidedly what's going to be the deciding factor. Other than I
Yeah.
wouldn't disagree in Game 7. I like Shesterkin in goal
Yeah,
at home,
right.
right?
Listen, breaks, injuries,
Right.
posts, things that you can't, it's the Stanley Cup playoffs, right?
Well, that's
1979, if Ken Dryden doesn't get drilled, Bunny LaRock doesn't get drilled in the face mask during warm-ups of Game 2, right?
Yeah, well, that made for argument, but really, when you look at that Montreal team, they had 9 Hall of Famers on it, so
Of course.
they were pretty good, and we weren't. But it was a great run, and those are the things that can happen, right?
Right.
But I just think that it's now again. I do think Boston will win. I do think Vancouver will win. I do think Dallas is going to win. So unlike years before where you get the 8th seed, well, LA was the 8th seed and they won it all.
Right.
So it's just that time of the year, and I think from a Ranger perspective, they have to, just concentrate on things they can control. Injuries you can't control. How the official calls the game you can't control. You can't control fate. Fate is what it is. But if you leave it out there, and that's why I often think that it's not so much when you lose, it's how did you lose? Were you beat? Or did you gift wrap situations for your opponent? Was their goaltender on a night where you could get nothing by him? But you eliminate that and keep that down, give yourself a good chance, and you know what? That's why we play.
Yep. And I have a feeling you're probably going to say, I'm going to pass on this, but I have to ask because you're here. You got a prediction in this one?
Uh, well, it would be a biased a prediction, and I'm certainly very proud to be part of this franchise, a big part of the thing. It's close. It's too close to call for me. I like Igor Shesterkin in Game 7 at home, and I just don't see, other than the things I pointed out going in without any games on the books. Can the Rangers withstand the relentless nature of Carolina's game, particularly in their own end? And can the Rangers' creative way of attacking the offense be the deciding factor? Beyond that, let's chat again after game 4 or 3 or 2 and say, oh boy, I missed the boat on this one. Or, what, we were close on that one. But if I was urging someone, I'd say, listen, tune in because I think it's going to be a hell of a series. I know we'll have the games on the radio side. I think I'll be working with the great Sam Rosen and Kenny. And I know MSG Network will have pre and post game stuff. So if I had the answers, I probably wouldn't tell anybody. And B, tune in, folks. It's going to be great.
I don't know. All these years all these years I've known you, I thought you had all the answers. That's what you kept telling me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you were one of the few people that evidently ever listened. So no, it's all good. It's all good. It's a fun time of the year, and there have been great stories created. There are great stories yet to create, and I'm excited to get it going.
Good stuff. Dave Maloney, of course, will be on the radio side with his analysis, as he said, with Sam Rosen and Kenny Albert on the call of rest of the way for the New York Rangers. We'll see where it goes from here. Game 1 coming up. We don't know which day just yet, but we'll be tuning in, and we appreciate all your insight, Dave.
Well, thanks, Jim. It's always a pleasure, and thanks for getting together.
All right, time to wrap things up on this edition of Forever Blue Shirts Rink Wrap. I am Jim Cerny. Do me a favor. Just do me this favor, all right? If you're enjoying this, if you're enjoying the banter, the interviews, and all that, make sure you go to the Forever Blue Shirts YouTube page and subscribe to all of our interviews, all of our the videos that we do, the interviews, the podcasts. A lot more things are going to be piling up on our YouTube page at Forever Blue Shirts. So make sure to subscribe there. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Cerny. You can follow all of our work at Forever Blue Shirts on Twitter as well at Forever Blue Shirts. Pretty neat, huh? You like that? Pretty smooth. At Forever Blue Shirts, at Jim Cerny on Twitter. Subscribe, follow us at Forever Blue Shirts on our YouTube page as well. Got a couple questions from social media that I'll just zip through really quickly, and then we'll call it a day, and we'll get set for the second round of the playoffs between the Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. And the first one is somebody named Tony wants to know why. Cerny, what is up with the guitar and what is up with the Led Zeppelin 2 behind you? Like, where are the hockey, posters? Where are the photos? Where are the mementos of your career, Cerny, 30 years of working in the business. You covered the Rangers in the Stanley Cup in 94, and you worked for the team for 10 years, and you worked for the Islanders, all this. And that's what you have up as your paraphernalia behind you on your videos and your podcasts and all that? Well, yeah, I probably need to do a little work on my decor here in my office. In fact, the best stuff is the stuff you can't see. It's actually in front of me. Got some really cool photos, framed photos and things like that up. So I'm going to work on it. If you have suggestions, send them to me through social media. And maybe it'll spark something and I'll clean up my act. But I'm not getting rid of the Led Zeppelin stuff. And I'm certainly not getting rid of my guitar. That's a fun hobby right there. But I'm not getting rid of Zeppelin 2 either. It's, hockey's here, but Led Zeppelin's here too. Okay? So there's that. Second, I have a bunch of people sending me messages on social media really concerned that Matt Rempe is either not going to play in this series or maybe only play a handful of games. And we discussed it with Dave Maloney. And I hear you, but I also understand the other side of the story. I think Matt Rempe is going to play game 1. It's hard to change your lineup. You sweep Washington. Rempe played a big part in that series, right? From the first goal of the series to maintaining his composure and being a really good physical presence. But again, as Dave Maloney pointed out, he's a guy that plays limited ice time. So he makes an impact when he plays. And I know the Garden crowd loves him and everything. But he is what he is. He's not going to impact the series like Igor or Adam Fox or Artemi Panarin. But in his small way and his limited ice time, he can make a positive impact. That positive impact could become a negative impact if he's overwhelmed by the speed that's going to come at him from the Carolina Hurricanes. I think he will be in the lineup in game 1. I do not see Peter Laviolette changing the lineup for game 1. However, if Laviolette believes that Rempe is a bit overwhelmed by the speed of Carolina, I do not believe that he would hesitate going to Johnny Brodzinski. And he could put Brodzinski simply in Rempe's spot on the 4th line. If he wanted to shake it up a little bit more, Brodzinski could go to that 3rd line. Will Cooley could then drop back and replace Rempe on the 4th line. And then as we talked about with Dave as well, maybe Philip Hedl comes into play in this series, right? Maybe Hedl all of a sudden ends up on the 3rd line, Cooley on the 4th, and Matt Rempe comes out. So there are a couple scenarios that might work against Rempe. But I think he's earned the right to be in that lineup game 1. Not to mention how he'll just add to the frenzy at Madison Square Garden for the first game of the series. And finally, a bunch of people have asked, well, Jim, what's your prediction here? What you got? I had Rangers over the Capitals in 5 games in the opener. So I was right on the result, not the amount of games. This one is going to the limit. And really, you could argue that it's a flip of the coin. And there are things along the way that we don't know that are going to happen that could affect a prediction being right or wrong. You can't predict bounces. You can't predict, bad penalty calls. You can't predict injuries. Carolina's already got 2 injuries heading into this series. Rangers are healthy. But boy, if somebody else comes out of, or someone comes out of the Ranger lineup, maybe that changes how the series plays out. You just don't know. So all things being equal, okay, I think the Rangers' edge in a Game 7 is between the pipes. I think Igor Shesterkin is the difference maker. It's the one area that I feel really confident about saying, boy, the Rangers are better in this area. And it's between the pipes. Not a knock on Frederik Andersen. He's done a heck of a job since coming back from that blood clotting issue. He was out 4 months this season. He has played some terrific hockey since getting back in the lineup. And he's a veteran, but he's a veteran with a checkered playoff past as well. Not saying he can't leave that behind. And he has a really good team in front of him. But if push comes to shove, all things being equal, Game 7, Madison Square Garden, I think Igor Shesterkin puts the Rangers over the top and into the Eastern Conference Final. But let's see how it plays out. A lot of hockey between now and then. We'll certainly be talking about it with you here at Forever Blue Shirts Rink Wrap. And continue to follow us over on our website, foreverblueshirts.com. We got you covered A to Z and everything in between. All things Rangers, all things Rangers prospects, all things Hartford Wolfpack. They're in the playoffs as well. 1-0 series lead right now on Providence in that series after taking 2 out of 3 from Charlotte. So we've got, wall-to-wall coverage. New York Rangers, their prospects, the Hartford Wolfpack. The place to be is foreverblueshirts.com. And make sure to subscribe. Go to YouTube and subscribe to Forever Blue Shirts. Thanks for hanging out with me. Let's get set for the second round of the playoffs. The New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes.